what happens when you have too much freedom? So, a common mistake I've noticed among people today when it's speak about God and what He gives us is that if God gives us freedom, it should not be restrained because God intended us to be free. That's why we have free will. I've even heard, unfortunately, some supposed traditional Catholics make statements to this effect, particularly when they're from the United States, where freedom is a strong cultural value. But what does the Bible have to say about this? If you take the Bible seriously, if you're a Christian of any sort, never mind a Catholic biblical tradition, you should take the passages of the Bible seriously. So, without further ado, let's take a look at what the Bible actually says about too much freedom. So, if you have a Bible, turn to Judges 17. We're going to be reading Judges 17 through to 18. This is the famous story of Micah's idol. There was at that time a man of Mount Ephraim whose name was Micah, who said to his mother, "The 1,100 pieces of silver which thou hast put aside for thyself, and concerning which thou didst swear in my hearing, behold, I have there with me." And she said to him, "Blessed art be my son by the Lord." So he restored them to his mother, who said to him, "I have consecrated and vowed the silver to the Lord, that my son may receive it at my hand, and make a graven and molten god. So now I deliver it to thee." So we have idolatry being used by freedom. Okay. Breaking relationship with God, not so great. And he restored them to his mother. She took the 100 pieces of silver, gave them to the silversmith to make of them a graven and molten god, which was in the house of Micah. And he separated also a little temple for the god, made an ephod and teraphim, as to say, a priestly garment and idols. And he filled his hand, the hand of one of his sons, and he became his priest. Those days, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did that which seemed right to himself. Now, in Israel, excessive idolatry, they already know that's not a good thing for society. Sadly, today, we are so far gone that we don't get that. We think, happens. Make an idol, idolatry happens. Say, do you. That's kind of like the society's values. These are not biblical values. And that we should have the freedom to do that is not a biblical value. Verse 7. And there's more. There was also another young man of Bethlehem, Judah, of the kindred thereof. He was a Levite and dwelt there. Now he went out from the city of Bethlehem, desired to sojourn wheresoever he should find it convenient for him. When he was come to Mount Ephraim, as he was on his journey, and he turned aside a little into the house of Micah, for he was asked by him whence he came, and he answered, "I am a Levite at Bethlehem, Judah. I am going to dwell where I can find a place to my advantage." And Micah said, "Stay with me, and be unto me a father and a priest. I'll give thee every year 10 pieces of silver, double suit of apparel, and thy victuals, i.e. food." He was content, and abode with the man. It was unto him as one of his sons. And Micah filled his hand, and had the young man with him for his priests, saying, "Now I know God will give me good, since I have a priest of the race of the Levites." So the Levites, fun fact, were not supposed to be priests. They were essentially the deacons. So the priests were only supposed to be the house of Aaron, the brother of Moses. Levites assist at the temple. They have a holy job, but it would be like essentially filling his hand, offering sacrifice. It would be like if a deacon in a traditional Catholic church tried to celebrate Mass. No. Not good. So we got idolatry, and you have an illicit priest to an idol. So it's like you have a deacon celebrating Mass in honor of a statue of Buddha. And this is wonderful freedom. What it brings you this nonsense. But that's chapter 17. So it's it just reflects our relationship with God. But it's only affecting the people who are consenting to this nonsense. There's more. That's what chapter 18 comes in. This is what happens when people have too much freedom. Chapter 18, verse 1. Those days there was no king in Israel, and the tribe of Dan sought them an inheritance to dwell in. So there's no king in Israel. No one's telling everyone what to do. Yay, freedom. Let's see what it looks like. For unto that day they had not received their lot among the other tribes, so they had been lazy at fulfilling the commandment of God and getting their allotted inheritance that God had commanded them to do. So they're being lazy in that regard. So the children of Dan sent 5 most valiant men, of their stock and family, from Sarah and Eshtaol to spy out the land and to view it diligently. And they said to them, Go and view the land. And they went on their way. When they came to the Mount Ephraim, they went to the house of Micah and rested there, knowing the voice of the young man, the Levite, and lodging with them. They said to him, Who brought thee hither? You know, he would probably had a different accent from being different part of the country. And what dost thou here? Why wouldst thou come hither? He answered them, Micah has done such and such things for me, and hath hired me to be his priest. Then they desired him to consult the Lord, that they might know whether their journey should be prosperous, and things should have effect. And he answered them, Go in peace. The Lord looketh on your way, and the journey that you go. So the 5 men going on came to Laias. They saw how the people dwelt therein, without any fear, according to the custom of the Sidonians, secure and easy, having no man at all to oppose them, being very rich, and living separated at a distance from Sidon, from all men. They returned to their brethren in Sarah and Eshtaol, who asked them what they had done, to whom they answered, Arise, let us go up to them, for we have seen the land which is exceeding rich and fruitful. Neglect not, lose no time, let us go and possess it. There will be no difficulty. We shall come to a people that is secure, to a spacious country. The Lord will deliver the place to us, which there is no want of anything that groweth on the earth. There went therefore of the kindred of Dan, to wit, from Sarah and Eshtaol, 600 men furnished with arms for war. And by the way, they're not just going to attack the Canaanites. Wait, keep watching. And going up they lodged in Karathrim of Judah, which place from that time is called the Camp of Dan, and behind Kiriatharim. From thence he passed into Mount Ephraim. This is where it gets interesting, starting at verse 13 in case you're not following along. When they were come before the house of Micah, the 5 men that before had been sent to view the land, Laias said to the rest of their brethren, You know that in these houses there is an ephod and teraphim, and engraved a molten god. See what you are pleased to do. And when they had turned a little aside, they went into the house of the young man, the Levite, who was in the house of Micah, and they saluted him with words of peace. And the 600 men stood before the door, appointed with their arms. But they that were gone into the house of the young man went about to take away the graven god, and the ephod, and teraphim, the molten god. The priest stood before the door. The 600 valiant men waited not far off. So they were gone, took away the graven thing, the ephod, and the idols, and the molten god. And the priest said to them, What are you doing? And they said to him, Hold thy peace, and put thy finger on thy mouth, and come with us, that we may have thee for a father and priest. Whether it is better for thee to be a priest in the house of one man, or tribe and family in Israel. When he heard this, he agreed to their words, and took the ephod and the idols and the graven god, and departed with them. So let's see what we've got here. We've got 600 armed men robbing someone's house, robbing their idols, and the things they're robbing are idols, and kidnapping their illicitly ordained priests. Okay, here's a question for everyone watching this. Can anyone tell me who the good guy in this story is? Verse 21. And when they were going forward, and I put before them the children and the cattle, all that was valuable, and were now at a distance from the house of Micah, The men that dwelt in the houses of Micah gathering together followed them, began to shout after them. They looked back and said to Micah, What aileth thee? Why dost thou cry? And he answered, You have taken away my gods, and which I have made me, and the priest, and all that I have, and you say, What aileth thee? Yeah, no kidding. The children of Dan said to him, See, thou say no more to us, lest men in rage come upon thee, and thou perish, and all thy house. So they went on the journey they had begun. But Micah, seeing that they were stronger than he, turned to his house. And verse 27. And the 600 men took the priest and the things we spoke of before, and came to Laias, to a people that was quiet and secure, and smote them with the edge of the sword. The city was burnt with fire, there being no man at all who brought them any succor, and they dwelt far from Sidon, had no society or business with any man. The city was in the land of Moab, and they built it and dwelt therein, calling the name of the city Dan, after the name of their father, who was the son of Israel, which before was called Laias. And they set up to themselves the graven idol, and Jonathan the son of Gershom the son of Moses, he and his sons were priests in the tribe of Dan until the day of their captivity, and the idol of Micah remained with them all in the time that the house of God was in Shiloh. In those days there was no king in Israel. Okay, who is the good guy in that story? And if you notice, now, if there's a common phrase and throughout all this, and in the following story, which is so horrific, if I told you this story on YouTube, I'm afraid this channel might get canceled. This was going on when there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Personal freedom led to idolatry, illicit priests, robbery, raiding of people's homes, etc. It was not good. When you have too much freedom, when you separate yourselves from God's law, things go haywire very, very, very quickly. Even secular societies, like, I want to point out to any secularists who think, oh, church laws are oppressive. Your secularist ideologies that have been come up with so far include Nazism and communism. You are worse than any abuse of church law that has ever happened. Even a lot of the genocide, even a lot of the violence that happened in the Middle Ages, religious violence, was done with the expressly against the command of religious leaders and of church authorities, both Protestant and Catholic. So, for example, a lot of the witch trials that happened in England happened during the time of the English Civil War, when ecclesiastical authority was kind of rocky, even in a Protestant standpoint. A lot of the pogroms that happened in Europe happened during times of Civil War when the authority of the king wasn't that great. There are even cases where when pogroms were happening against the Jews in the Middle Ages, one of the people who were hiding the Jewish people was the local bishop. Because people didn't want to follow God's law or didn't want to follow church law, and they wanted to do what they thought was right in their own eyes. And this is what the end result is whenever people decide they don't want to do what God's law is. They want to do things their way, what they think is appropriate. They want to approach God's law their way. Not saying that you cannot or should not have some amount of freedom. Catholic Church does condemn totalitarian regimes. Certain amount of freedom is good, even to a certain degree, according to Catholic teaching. Toleration of even non-Catholic religions, to some extent. St. Thomas Aquinas goes in detail about this in the Summa, and other theologians have commented on this. So, for example, a Catholic state is not allowed to go to, say, war with Saudi Arabia because the people of Saudi Arabia do not want to become Christian, for example. We can say, like, if you're persecuting Christian minorities there, we can, or if you're doing things that are contrary to natural law, there is a certain amount of morality that is required and expected and can be forced even upon non-Christians, not full divine law. But if you're doing things like child sacrifice, for example, you can go in and stop that. But also not all false religions are equal. Like, heresy is considered to be the worst of the worst, but especially Judaism is considered, it's a precursor to Christian religion. Take it up with St. Thomas Aquinas if you don't like it. And they should have, like, as long as they're not in a fully traditional Catholic theocratic society, as long as they're not forcibly converting or trying to convert traditional Catholics, they should be allowed to do what to follow their religion in peace and build synagogues, etc., etc. That is what traditional Catholic religious law and teaching says. That being said, the point here is that when you have too much freedom, when you divorce yourselves from God's law, and you have this notion that, okay, I have free will. God gave me free will. Therefore, anyone who tries to stop me from exercising my free will is opposing the will of God. That is a growing opinion. And no, there's plenty of verses in Scripture and the Torah where Moses has specific penalties by God's command applied for certain crimes. You have cases where in Romans where Paul says that rulers are meant to be terrors to wrongdoers. They're there to terrorize and force wrongdoers into behaving. Your freedom can be limited and should be limited according to the Bible. And we should not make freedom an idol. Freedom is good, but it needs to be within divine law. It needs to be within the law of God and His church. And yes, if someone wants to limit you and force you to obey a law, yes, civil society gets to do that. Thinking that that a government cannot force you to do something you don't want to do just because I didn't consent to it. If you think that's a legitimate reason to rebel, you are adhering to an ideology that is explicitly condemned by the Catholic Church in its decrees against Freemasonry. You are holding the errors and doctrines of Freemasonry. You are being a Freemason minus the handshakes. Anyway, God bless. Have a great day. If you have an SSPX chapel near you, be sure to check it out. God bless. Let's say 3 Aves for everyone who is maybe in error and is worshiping freedom far too much. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedictum vivus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus, sanctum ea Mater Dei, pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et nostrum, amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedictum vivus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus, sanctum ea Mater Dei, pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et nostrum, amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedictum vivus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus, sanctum ea Mater Dei, pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et nostrum, amen. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, amen. God bless. Have a great day, and if you ever get a chance, check out an SSPX chapel near you. God bless.